on the VCOP when we are done. So, as many of you already know, my name is Yvonne, and I'm going to be one of the panelists today due to my prior experience as a group with group supervision, CE with the Aphasia Mentors program here at the school. I typically take 4 students, and so I am looking forward to sharing a little bit more about that with you as the afternoon wears on. So Elena, maybe I'll pass it to you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Elena. I live in Prince George, and my experience with the group supervision model was with the UBC SNAP clinic. So that stands for the Student Northern Aphasia Project, which ran a few years ago. And in that model, I would take 4 students at a time, SLP students, and we ran 3 iterations of the program. So I had the first group was the second years in their 4th placement, which ran into kind of passed over to first years in their 2nd placement. And then the next year, we also took 4 more students in their 2nd placement. I can just briefly talk about that if you want, or just wait.
Yeah, why don't we'll do the introductions and then we can come back if that's okay with you, Elena.
Yeah.
Rhea, can we go to you?
Hi, my name is Rhea Lazar. I work in Vancouver at one of the health units through Vancouver Coastal Health. And my coworker and I, Lisa Langford, take 2 students. We're jointly responsible for 2 students because we each work part-time. The students are in their final placement, so they've had quite a lot of experience. And we are serving there are 2 Aboriginal Head Start preschools in our area. So that forms the majority of the work. We think we've been doing it since 2018. So 5 or 6 years. And from that, three of our students have actually been hired on with Vancouver Coastal Health. And one of them is here on this Zoom call. I'm not going to say who it is, but I hope she has some input. And that's it.
Great, thank you. Rachel, can I jump to you?
Sure. Hi, my name is Rachel Jordan. I'm an audiologist. I work at Costco Hearing Aid Center in Burnaby. I don't have any experience with supervising a group of students, but I have volunteered to do it. And so I'll talk a bit about how I imagine that to work a little later on.
Thank you. And Paige, can I jump to you?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Paige Griffiths. I'm the sole SLP up in Kitimat at the Child Development Center. We are currently the test pilot for a family connection center. So with that, right now I'm serving birth to 19, with my main focus being on kind of the early intervention age. I've taken students for the past 3 years for externship 2. I really like having them for the 7 weeks and watching the growth, and they're still a little bit green and are really absorbing lots of the information I have to share. Last summer was my first time taking 2 students, and I really loved it. It was a really great experience, and I'm really excited to share with you, that journey.
So Cheryl, I'll bounce it back to you.
Okay, I apologize for that. My goodness. Did everyone do their introductions?
I think so.
And can you see just the PowerPoint and not my presenter? Okay, thank you. We had some background help. Oh, technology. Thank you everyone so much for taking time out of your busy schedules and your days and your caseloads and your clients for attending today's presentation and this session. We're really excited to offer this to all of our amazing clinicians. My name is Cheryl McGee. I am a clinical coordinator on the SLP ACE team, and I'm also the MSc program director for the school. I'll be facilitating this event today, or trying to facilitate this event today. And Jamie Nagy, our senior program clinical assistant, is also helping me behind the scenes. And today's event is already being recorded, and it will be posted on our virtual community of practice, which I'll pop into the chat box as soon as I stop sharing my slides. Now, let's see if we can get to the next slide. No, we cannot. Oh yes, this might work. Okay, I would like to start with some land acknowledgements. UBC's Point Grey campus is located on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam people. The land it is situated on has always been a place of learning for the Musqueam people, who for millennia have passed on their culture, history, and traditions from one generation to the next. We acknowledge and respect the Lekwungen, the Songhees, and Esquimalt peoples, on whose territory our new Vancouver Island Speech Language Pathology program is located, and the Lekwungen and Wasanich peoples, whose historical relationships with the land continue to this day. I won't go over that because we've talked a little bit already about the introduction, so thank you, Evan, for covering for me. And we're going to get on to our event. First of all, though, oh, sorry, a few reminders, so some housekeeping things to keep in mind. We really would like to keep this event as interactive as possible. If you could keep your cameras on, if you're able to, that would be appreciated. Please use your first and last name as your Zoom name if you haven't already. It really helps us with, we export the participant list from all our events to know who has attended. If you would like to if you'd like to ask a question at any time, please raise your hand. You can use the raise hand function to do that, or use your physical hand. And the panelists will answer your questions as they come up. If your question is not answered and the event is coming to an end, you can please type it into the chat. And I have Lisa Luft, who is also on our ACE team. She is going to be collecting those questions for us. Thank you, Lisa. All right, so we want to know a little bit about you. On your devices, you can enter at slido.com and enter in that code, or you can use the QR code that you see on your slide, and you can tell us a little bit about yourself. And there's more than one answer. You can pick more than one response. The panelists can also respond. I forgot to put clinical educator. That would have been a good one. Great, okay. So the majority is SLP, a few audiologists, some practice leads or managers, and of course our UBC faculty or staff. Wonderful, thank you so much. Welcome, welcome. Oh, and then I would like to acknowledge that there probably are many of you attending and zooming in from outside of the Lower Mainland. So this is a word cloud. So let us know where you're zooming in from today. Oh, hello, Nanaimo. So the larger the words is represents more people that are attending. Vancouver, Victoria, New West, Surrey, Nanaimo are the top 5. Little Bernie. All over BC. Kitimat, Burnaby, Kelowna, Langley, Prince George, Cowichan. All right, thank you so much for attending wherever you are. Okay, so everyone has done their introductions already. Thank you so much to our panelists for agreeing to participate in this event today. We are so lucky to have all of you on our panelist list. These are the questions that we've pre-selected and thought about as a group. I will be facilitating this, so in a few minutes I'm going to take the slides down and then it's going to be more interactive. So we're going to be talking about a little bit more about the panel's experience with group models and what does a typical group model look like in their clinical setting. What was their motivation or their reason for taking more than one student? They're going to talk about how they orient students. How do they manage the physical space? What are some strategies to help with time management? How do they assign 2 students the workload and the caseload responsibilities? How do you provide 2 students feedback? And how do we manage student differences when it comes to competencies, experience, and maybe interpersonal skills? And then all of us are going to end with one tip for success. But I will facilitate these questions and stop sharing. All right. So, let me go to my notes. Okay. So then please remind me, did everyone already talk about sort of what a typical group model looks like in their clinical settings, or should we start with that?
I think maybe we could start with the second question because I think the rest might crop up as we go. We can kind of answer it individually as our questions come up. That's okay.
That sounds great. All right. So Rachel will be taking the lead with this question. What is your reason? What was or is your reason for taking more than one student at a time during externships?
So I I agreed to take 2 students this year. My rationale was that you know, typically in order to accommodate students, we have to reduce the number of appointments that we take, and so by taking 2 students, that doubles the amount of work that the students can do, and then it's kind of less of a shrinking. And then there's the added benefit of the students are able to learn from each other. So there's a bit more collaboration there, and hopefully more reinforcement of whatever they're observing. Yeah, I think that. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rachel, for sharing.
I can add just from the to what Rachel was saying around the peer learning piece. I find that one of the most valuable things to sort of come out of taking a group of students is the learning that they do with and from one another. I find it quite powerful, and to hear that they get to a point where they're giving each other feedback. They get to a point where they're sort of brainstorming together and then coming to me with some solutions or ideas. And I find that happens a lot quicker when they're working together than if they were solo on the placement. So I do find that actually things, the progression of how students kind of perform, if you will, on the placement is at a little bit of a different pace when they are together, because I think that support goes a long way.
Excellent. Thanks, Evan. Do any of the other panelists want to talk about that one, the rationale or the reason for taking 2 students or 4 students?
I can just say it was presented by UBC to us in that format, so we didn't really question it, but I think it's easier on the supervisors because the students are collaborating so much and figuring out so much of it between the 2 of them. I feel it takes the pressure off me.
Yeah, to build on that as well, the PT who was up here, she had previously taken 2 students, so I was kind of able to see what it was like having 2 students before jumping in. I'm also in quite a remote placement, so when I had a single student, I was a little bit worried that they were lonely and weren't enjoying the town. So having 2, it was nice knowing that they roomed together and they were able to have a friend to go on excursions with and really explore the north. And yeah, I think have a little bit of home with them. It was kind of a nice social fit as well.
I can add on to that too. By taking 4 students, I felt like there was a lot more confidence between the 4 students. They just felt more confident having each other and bouncing ideas off each other too. So that peer learning piece, and just support amongst themselves. And I think there's just lots of room for like fresh ideas that way too, between them kind of bouncing off each other. And then also being in Prince George, they had each other either rooming together or just for leisure activities and social time too.
Thanks, Elena. And Michelle Andrews in the chat said, I did some of my placements in Kitimat/Terrace in 2016. I highly recommend it, smiley face. Thanks, Michelle, for sharing. One of the reasons that we're putting on this professional development session for everyone today is we are either asking or finding that clinicians are volunteering to take more than 1 student at a time for externships. So it's just very timely and I guess serendipitous that Evan and I decided that we wanted to put this on. It's a very important topic that we really would like to, continue and to encourage clinicians to consider. And we do have quite a few more clinicians taking 2 students for either externship 1 or externship 2, and of course externship 4, like Ria and Lisa always do, in 2025. So we're just seeing an increase in this. So this is one of the reasons why we're doing this presentation today. And yes, Marcia, we cannot underestimate the benefit of the pairing when located away from their home community, right? If the students are paired together and they get to go on adventures with a peer. Excellent, thank you, everyone. All right, so move on to the next question, which is how do you orient students? And Ria, sorry, you're going to take the lead with this, and then Evan and whoever else wants to jump in.
Great. So it's a little bit tricky because Lisa and I work different days, but we are very fortunate to have supportive management and they let us change our days. So for the very first day of the placement, Lisa and I are both working for the full day and we do a full day orientation. So the students need to, well, before they even get to us, they have to do their Paris training. I don't know if you know about Paris, it's our computerized documentation system. So they must do that before they start the placement with us. Then on that first day, they get an orientation from us about Vancouver Coastal Health, in particular the 6 health units. They get an orientation from our building manager about all the different programs in the building. I think they get a health and safety orientation. And we spend a lot of time just sitting and chatting. We really want to find out from the students what they're hoping to get from this experience. We talk about what experiences they have had, what their goals are. Oh, and Lisa always uses the line, pretend that this is the first day of your first job, or something like that. So we're really encouraging the students to take the responsibility for the clients. What else do we do? Oh, we go out to visit the 2 preschools that we'll be working at. One is just a close walk from the office, and the other is a bit of a drive. What else? Yeah, we spend a lot of time having conversations. We talk about the structure of the week. So the way it works is I work Monday, Tuesday. So we're at Eagle's Nest Preschool for those days. Wednesday and Thursday, they're at Singing Frog with Lisa, and then Friday is a day in the office. What else do we do that orientation day? I guess we go over the caseload and let the students delve into the charts. And I think that's all. Yeah, I see a nod. Okay.
Thank you. So really setting those expectations early.
Well, and setting expectations and finding out from the students what they hope to get from the placement.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can jump in. So very similar in many respects, but what I do for the students who come to the Aphasia Mentors program, so I take the students in the fall externship, so the part-time externship, and I only have them 1 day a week, but it tends to be a pretty packed day. And so when they send me their introductory email, I respond with a template of sorts, which is what I referred to as my sort of orientation document. And so on that document, I will have things like the location and the hours, breaks that they can expect, lunchtimes, kind of the usual run-of-the-mill things. But included in that document, I also have various readings that I want them to complete prior to attending. And in preparation for this panel, I realized I should probably have a reading about peer learning, and I'm going to be adding that to my list for one of the things that they can maybe look over and ask me questions about as they meet with me. But in the document or throughout the document, as it goes on, I talk about goals of the externship from my perspective, and I find that that's a nice jumping off point to then talk about how we can meet their goals when we get to that point. And then we talk about student roles and responsibilities, and that's sort of where I make it very clear around what some of the group processes are for the students while they're on the placement. So the things that they will do together, some of the things that I will expect them to do that they'll be responsible for on their own. And in that, there's also projects that I provide. So the students will complete a project, a group project per externship, which we try and have as some sort of a product that we use then as part of the program going forward. So I have amazing products from students from way back in 2017, 2018 that I still use weekly now, which is pretty cool. And it leaves a really nice legacy of the students in the program. So I have various students' names over various things. And then the other thing that I do, because I find that students, when they're paired or when they're grouped, I think sometimes some of their initial concern can be around, and I will talk about this later too, is around getting enough feedback or having that opportunity to sort of, how are we going to do this? How are they going to, get that one-on-one? What's going to be in group? And so in the orientation document, I actually do out a schedule of when the midterm and when the final eval will be. So they know that before they ever even really meet with me. It's scheduled for the week of. And then I will put in that feedback will be in group for X number of weeks. And then there will be opportunities for one-on-one meetings twice outside of the midterm and final. And so the majority of the meetings that they have with me will be group feedback, but I do have scheduled one-on-one time so that they know that they will have that time to address any of their individual concerns. And I think that just simmers things down from any sort of anxiety from the outset. And then once we get going and once we actually start with the group feedback, oftentimes by the time we get to a later stage where there is an opportunity for one-on-one, sometimes they don't even take it. Like, no, we're fine meeting as a group, thanks. So I find that sort of helps to reduce anxiety and just creates a clear plan for them as it's externship 3 for the 11 weeks.
Great, thank you, Van. The last slide, I've put in a few little resources and articles about peer-assisted learning, so I'll put one of them in the chat right now. Is there any other panelists that want to talk about how they orient students?
Yeah, I would just echo everything that Ria and Van have said. In addition, we also, for this clinic, I think it was Marcia, actually provided some information and talked to the students before they came up about just group development. And so kind of the forming stages, like norming, storming, and that kind of thing. And so they had some readings about that before too. And then, that first week we're doing orientation, first day. There's some things that got spread out over the first week because I had 4 students. So we did talk as a group about their past experiences working in a group and just their clinical experience. But then I also had scheduled one-on-one time because I had all 4 students. So just if they wanted some private time, we scheduled one-on-one time every week of the placement. So they had that opportunity if they wanted to. And that was an opportunity for us to just talk about their specific learning styles, how they prefer to learn, prefer to receive feedback. So I could take note of that for each of the individual students too.
Excellent, thanks, Alina. Okay, let's move on to the next question, which is, how do you manage physical space restrictions at your site? And Elena, you were going to take the lead with this one. And again, panelists can pop or share at any time. And we really do welcome any questions. If you have any questions at any time, just raise your hand or pop them in the chat. I'm monitoring the chat closely.
Okay, so Yes, when I was running the SNAP clinic, so we took 4 students, just to give you a tiny bit of background. So they were paired up, and each pair was assigned one outpatient aphasia therapy group that ran twice a week, so on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So there were 2 groups running twice a week. And so when one pair was leading the group, the other pair and myself were observing via Skype, because we weren't able to find a one-way mirror room with an observation room behind it. So at that time we set up Skype, but now it'd be much easier to Zoom. It was kind of a one-way observation, so our screen was muted and no video on. So the very first year we did this, we were able to book a pediatric SLP therapy room as the therapy space in the hospital. And then we weren't really part of any department at that time, so I was able to just use the online booking system to book various rooms, usually somewhat consistently, for kind of our working and office space, debriefing, and observation rooms throughout the whole 14 weeks. And then the second year we ran the program, we were lucky to have the Learning and Development Center attached to the hospital, which technically belongs to UBC. So we were able to book that through the UBC online system, and and did the same thing. We used the technology instead of Skype, I think it was WebEx, through the Learning Center, so we could observe, same thing, one-way kind of observation of the group while it was running. And any room changes that often come up, there was an in-person administrator that I could just work with and sort things out. Because we didn't have a home department, we used some connections. So in the rehab unit, we were able to kind of store all our materials in a locked space overnight, each night, which was really helpful. Yes, and then if we were stuck and didn't have any specific rooms booked that day for kind of our working space, planning space, we did have the luxury. There's a big atrium space at the Learning Development Center, had tables and chairs, and there's the hospital library there too. So we could set up there for the day and just kind of do our work and use the photocopiers at the library too. So, yeah.
Thank you, Elena. Does any of the other panelists want to share about their physical space restrictions, if there are any, at your site?
I would just add that we have access to laptop computers, which is really, really useful, especially when we're going out to the preschool, so that the students can take notes and enter data.
Yes, I'll just add that we had all of our students bring their own laptops, and then we had secure Wi-Fi through the hospital that they could connect with.
Okay, thank you, everyone. The next question has to do with time management. So Rachel, you'll take the lead with this one. What are some strategies that you use or have learned to use to help with time management?
So again, I haven't actually done this yet, but when I envision doing it, it's definitely a lot of planning ahead when it comes to the way that appointments are booked. So obviously it's well, maybe it's not obvious to all of you, but in an audiology clinic, often there's blocking for different types of appointments, for hearing tests, for hearing aid evaluations, and for fitting. And in order to meet various targets or kind of accommodate the kinds of requests that we get, you end up blocking your schedule to say, I'm going to take a hearing test at 9 o'clock, and then I'm going to do a fitting at 10:30, etc. So that blocking is a critical part of how it would be possible to have multiple students, because it's a time and space thing too. In my clinic, I have 3 rooms, but I have other clinicians as well. And so the students can be seeing a patient each, especially on days when I have fewer other clinicians present. And and so then they'll both be getting some individual experience because obviously they need hands-on experience. But I find, especially with externship 4, that the students are pretty ready to be doing a hearing test with kind of minimal supervision. And so it would be feasible to be kind of supervising both of them by just checking, kind of going between rooms and just checking to make sure everything makes sense and is okay. Yeah, but the only way that's going to work is if I'm very strategic about when those appointments are and make sure there's time for them to collaborate with each other, time for them to do their outcome notes. That's maybe not the same time, so that if we run out of computers, there's always a computer that they can do their notes on. So that's the plan.
Thanks, Rachel. I'm going to ask you a specific question because it's specific to audiology. Have you thought about how you envision having the students in the audiology booth? Would both students be in there at the same time, or would they take turns?
So we have a room, and then the booth, our booths are the smaller ones that are kind of inside the room. And the clinician only needs to go into the booth itself to put headphones on and to change the headphones. So it definitely wouldn't be big enough to have 2 people in there. The booths are not that big. So one of them would go in and do that, but there would be room for myself and 2 students and a patient and a family member in most of the rooms that I have here. So we could kind of all crowd into one room and they could be actively observing or participating in all of the appointments.
Great, thank you. Oh yes, time management. Any other panelists want to comment on time management strategies? What's worked, what hasn't worked?
Kind of refers back to the orientation document I was talking about, but I do find that, as Rachel had said, sort of planning ahead of time is really great if you can sort of set out a little bit what you're going to do in blocks even. I know that's possibly easier for some placements than others, but between 9 and 10 with me, students will be doing one thing, and then between 10 and 1, let's say, that's sort of the client time, and then there'll be lunch, and then in the afternoon, that's when they're going to go and actually work a little bit on their own, and then they'll have another so I try and just block things so at least they have a bit of an idea of what's happening when. Of course, with like flexibility in mind, but I do find that just having that sort of plan helps to just arrange your day, organize your day, know so that they know when they're going to see clients, that they know when they have a bit of downtime, and then to harp on about how great group supervision is. When they have downtime, they're working together, so it's productive, and it's a nice break for the CE as well, to be able to go and kind of do maybe something else and then come back and you can confer. So it's a nice part of the placement, I will say.
Wonderful. Evan, you have a question from Michelle Andrews. Do you have a copy of the orientation document you're able to share? I'm a new CE this year looking at building resources for new students.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it's a very, I will happily share at least the headers, if you will. I will, someone's making note of this and I'll make sure that you get that.
Also, too, in our clinical educator handbook, which is on our virtual community of practice, we do have some sort of checklists or guidelines for setting expectations at the very beginning of your placement, just to make it a positive learning environment for both the clinical educator and the students. So I will pop that link into the chat, but I'll also find the specific pages where that orientation checklist is. It's called Setting Expectations. And then Alex Miniker had to head out for an MBS. Thanks for coming, Alex. Excellent.
One thing I do for my own sanity, especially because I do work only Monday and Tuesday, I tell the students that first thing Monday morning, I need a half an hour to get myself organized. So that first half hour of the week, I'm not available to the students. Just there's all the emails from the week to deal with and all that organizational stuff. So I make sure to take that time. And then for the students, having the one full day on Fridays as a non-clinical day, I think is really helpful for them to do their planning.
Right, you bring up a good point, which I'll reiterate, is, definitely take that time, and Marcia just made a comment, but take that time to do the things you need to do in order to do your job. We've had many of these events before, and we keep saying the student does not need to be attached to you at all times. They do not need to be beside you at all times. We know that you have emails to check. You have your own, paperwork to do. So the students are more than capable of doing some self-study, looking over assessment tests, writing some draft progress notes, writing assessment reports, whatever it may be, looking over resources and session planning. So feel free to give that to the students, or let them know that that's their time to do what they need to do so that you can get your job done as well. Yes, and exactly. So Marcia says having a 2-on-1 should not be providing 2 placements in the space of 1. Exactly. Right. Anything else about time management? I think we covered quite a bit in that question.
I was just going to add one thing. For our group model with the 4 students, we would just do like a daily rounds at the beginning of each day, like maybe just 15 minutes to half an hour, just to kind of touch base and talk about kind of the plan for the day, even though, like Ivana was saying, we had a good structure set up for kind of each day of the week, what was going on, clinic days and prep days and different things. But it was a good chance if there was any like announcements or anything new or problem solving, we could just tackle that at the beginning and then have a good plan for the day.
Excellent. These are great strategies. Thanks, Alina. Thank you, everyone. Okay, we'll move on. Marcia says a routine and structure is your friend. Exactly. All right. So how do you assign workload and caseload responsibilities when you have more than one student? And Ria, you're taking the lead with this.
So the way we do it is, well, we have our caseload of kids that need to be seen. We assign each student to be ultimately responsible for each student in terms of making sure that documentation is done properly. If a parent needs to be contacted, that one student is responsible for it. Even though in reality, both students will be interacting with and working with all of the students, we divide it up so that that official legal kind of stuff is managed by one student, and writing communication notes to the parent. So.
Yeah. And there's just some comments in the chat about making hi there, similar to Michelle, I'm a new CE. Would you be able to share the orientation document? I think this is for you, Ivan. But then Michelle said there's she's looking through the handbook and it's really informative. And it is on our virtual community of practice, our handbook. Okay, sorry about that. Workload and caseload. Who else would like to talk about that?
I think it's similar. It's just they're working in a group, but ensuring that they each know what they're responsible for, because the buck sort of has to stop somewhere. And so they each have, in my case, there's a group that they are responsible for and that they're facilitating, but the expectation is that they're sort of conferring and talking together and giving each other strategies for each other's groups, because often more often than not, they're sort of encountering the same sort of successes and challenges. And so I think it's really helpful for them to brainstorm as prep and as a debrief together. But yeah, they will each have their own groups so that I can, which will probably be the next question, give them feedback on something that's specific to what they're doing.
Thanks, Yvonne. And Paige, you, and then Marcia.
Yeah, I feel like when I get to the question that I'm leading, a lot of this all like ties back together, which is why I've been a bit quiet. But in the summer, so I take students for externship too. And I kind of shift gears a little bit and I run a lot of groups. So similar to others, I might assign them a group that they kind of lead, or maybe they flip-flop leading that group. We do a lot of collaboration with our OTs and PTs and IDPs. And so I might have them partner with them as well to practice working in a collaboration with other disciplines. I also, because they're here for 7 weeks, and although my caseload is changing a bit, I am kind of able to see kids weekly. So they might be assigned to 1 or 2 kids who they will kind of plan and follow over the 7 weeks. Yeah, just kind of summer is very flowy, but also a little bit structured. So I just kind of follow what they're interested in, which I'll talk more about for my question.
Thanks, Paige. Marcia, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I just want to really support all the CEs here who know specifically what they want the students to learn in and from, and what they can carve off that is not for them. So the structure, we're not thinking about every minute being planning, but it's not like you have a shadow the whole time. For this to work, the expectations have to be specific. They have to really understand what they are accountable for in plain language. And then it starts to relax once they understand those parameters.
Thanks, Marcia. Paige, I'm going to go back to you because I think it's really important, and then we'll go back to feedback. So how do you manage student differences when it comes to competencies, experience, interpersonal skills? We know that all students come to these placements with varying different backgrounds.
Yeah. So I think a lot of the other CEs really touched on the importance of kind of those first couple of days and that orientation and just really connecting with your students about where they're at. I can only talk about last summer was my first time taking students, so they're kind of my example of having to. And I will say I was very lucky that they were both very knowledgeable and very competent, and were also very clear about where they felt their weaknesses were. I really appreciated that. They were very like, hey, I think I need help here. I'm not comfortable here. And because they were very clear with those guidelines, I was really able to kind of tailor their support. One of my students had shared that she was not comfortable with preschoolers. She just hadn't really been exposed to little kids, and they can be a little bit scary if you're not used to being on the floor. So I really helped support her on being more comfortable on the floor, how to tailor her language to preschoolers. Whereas my other student was very comfortable. So I also did a lot of that collaboration and had them connect about how they could support each other. The other, yeah, kind of going back again to like the importance of like that orientation piece. I really asked, did they want to do group discussions? Did they want one-on-one feedback? Kind of what was their preference? And they opted for open discussions. So every Friday I had set a time where we talked about our week, what we liked, what we didn't like, what was challenging, something that they wanted to see more of next week, and really did a lot of kind of a group feedback. And then I scheduled a lot of one-on-one time for that more personal, kind of more constructive feedback in that one-on-one setting. Sorry, I made lots of notes to make sure I covered everything I wanted to say. Yeah, I think it just really goes back to like planning and making sure your orientation is really strong and you set that stage for your students and for how you want to give feedback and how they want to receive it.
Thank you so much, Paige. And you're taking 2 students again this summer, so so thank you for that. There's a question in the chat. What is the realistic number of children that you have provided to students? I heard 1 to 2 children. I don't know the first name, but is that question for Paige or just as an expectation in general for externships? I think I just need a bit more clarification with that question.
If I can come on audio, it's Diana Lockie. I'm up in Squamish, and I heard someone mention that they have they use 1 to 2. They normally assign 1 to 2 children or cases per student who's doing their placement. We have someone coming in the spring from McEwen SLPA, so it's a little bit different. And we were going to be sharing her amongst 4 SLPs with one primary supervisor, because that's the only way we can do it, because all of us only work a couple of days a week. So I'm curious about, when I heard 1 to 2 children, I was thinking we might have a candidate have like 5 to 7 to 10 students per school. So I don't want to be unrealistic, which is why I'm here listening to what other people are doing. I don't want to be unrealistic, but I feel like as a full-time opportunity, what is realistic?
Oh, okay. So just to clarify, it's the number of clients that is expected for a student to potentially take on to their case. Okay.
Yeah,
so
for a
if you
student
go,
or a candidate, yeah.
Yeah, so there's different expectations and guidelines that the ACE team has come up with. They start on page 21 of our clinical externship handbook. So page 21 is externship 1, and then they continue for the rest of the externships. So you can take a look at those. But those are actually like, I find them as minimal guidelines. And it really does depend on the student, their comfort level, their background experience. But for example, by the end of, let's say so this would be externship 2, it says that the student at the end, by week 7, is expected to take about 50 to 65% of the caseload. But there's like week by week outlines of what the client expectations would be for each externship.
Thank you. That's really helpful. I'll have a look at the book. Yeah, I've got it downloaded, so I'll look at it after, but that's really clarifies.
Perfect. Yeah. But 1 to 2 children seems low. Okay. So I'm just noticing our time. Does any of the panelists want to talk about feedback anymore before we go on to the last question, which is tips for success?
I just think it's really important for the students to understand that they are being evaluated as individuals. Of course, we're looking at how they collaborate with their colleagues, but we are looking at them as individuals.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I think that's probably one of the first things I will say, because I find, again, that's often a source of maybe unspoken anxiety, that they're going to be compared to their peers. And so I'm very, very explicit from the beginning that it is not a comparison. It is, you are you, and I want to get to know you individually. And that's why we have, that's why I set up the individual meetings. And they can always request more if necessary. And so that's a really important piece. But again, to echo Ria, I think having them work together in partnership, there's many things on the externship evaluation form that lends itself to be, talking about working as a team, working with your colleagues, all of that kind of stuff. So they are evaluated on that, how they work together, but that their individual clinical skills, rapport building, etc., is very much just the benchmark is themselves. And I'm try to be very clear with that. The other thing I will just say with a group that I find very helpful is written feedback, because you can't give them all feedback after well, for me with 4 of them, I can't give them all feedback after every minute of the day. So I write everything down for them. And then that's what informs the group discussion. And I also get them to complete the same form for themselves. So things that they have done well, things that they can improve on, or things that they'd like to sort of consider for next time. And they do their own self-eval in a group, and then I come in and then we talk about it openly in a group of 4, well, 5, including myself.
Thank you, Van. And you gave me a reminder. There is a written feedback form available on our virtual community of practice. I popped the link into the chat. But we have many, resources on our virtual community of practice. Our handbook is there, forms are there. It's sort of like a one-stop shop for our clinical educators to find all the information that they need to make a positive and successful externship from the very beginning. Last question before we end. What is one tip for success for group models of learning? Who wants to start us off?
I can start us off. I think it ties back to what everybody has said, but kind of planning out and scheduling those feedback meetings. I often find I maybe overschedule them, and then by the end of the externship, we're not needing them as frequently, but just making sure they're already blocked out. I do continue with a full caseload, so it is about being smart with your time management, especially if you're balancing two, because going back to the previous topic, treating them as individuals and making sure they have access to the same amount of feedback. So planning ahead, mark everything off on your calendar before they arrive is my tip.
Great. Thanks, Paige. Great advice.
I would agree with that and also add be flexible. That's one of the big things we're trying to teach our students in our particular placement. You never know what's going to happen, who's going to be there, and just be flexible, go with it.
Yes, adaptable and flexible. Thank you.
I don't really know tip, but oh, sorry, Elena, you go ahead.
No, it's okay.
No, mine's
All right.
honestly not a tip, so you go ahead.
I would say kind of, yeah, echoing the same thing. I think having structure to your days and your weeks is really helpful in establishing those clear kind of ground rules with your students at the beginning and expectations, but then being really open and flexible to things as the externship progresses, because there were some really neat ideas we were able to kind of, yeah, jump on and try some different things that I hadn't planned for. So there's some neat things that come out of it.
Yeah, I think we talked about this when we met as a group of panelists last week, but I can't imagine doing externships any other way. And so I really have drank the Kool-Aid, but I think it really makes my job as a CE really, really enjoyable. I absolutely love taking groups of students. I've been taking groups of students in this position and in my position prior to working here at UBC. So my whole 15-year career, I've only taken one student once. And I will never do it again. That's all. I just need to take groups of students. I find it that much easier. And the other thing, which I don't know if it's a tip for success, but Cheryl, you might get to this anyway. But I think for those of you who are considering and those of you who are already committed to taking more than one student this summer, I think we're hoping to have opportunities for those of us in the group model to actually connect throughout the externship so that we can provide support to each other and a similar opportunity for the students. So it actually becomes, I'm calling it a special interest group now. We're not really that, but that's just the name I've decided to give it in this moment, so that we do have that support.
Yes. Rachel, do you have any tips for success?
Yeah, so not with reference to having multiple students, but I think the advice that I would offer someone taking students in general would be just to make sure that the students get lots of hands-on practice, because that's what they're there for. And they need to kind of figure out what they do and don't know, and be allowed to almost make mistakes. I mean, not that you're putting patient safety at risk in any way, but they need to be allowed to try things out and then see what maybe doesn't work.
Great tip. And then Darlene popped a comment into the chat. To audiologists, although we haven't done this yet in audiology, if you're feeling inspired or curious because of today's session, Sasha and I would be happy to help you figure out how this might work for you. And also too, for externship 1 and 2, which is I'm taking the lead this year with taking the lead and planning. I still need, I think, 7 more placements. So thank you to those that are here today who are taking 2 students. And if you want to take 2 students, please reach out to me, because we still need a few more. And then Marcia, to summarize, plan the time, be flexible, clear ground rules at the beginning, but be open to placement progresses, enjoy the job as CE in this model. Yes. Stay connected to the other 2-on-1 people and make sure they get lots of hands-on practice, allowing them to make mistakes to learn more about themselves, because that's how we learn, is by making mistakes. We have a special something coming up. Jamie's going to announce this in a minute. But I just wanted to let everyone know, and just I really want to thank everyone first for coming here and attending and taking time out of your busy schedules to join our session today. I wanted to announce our next clinical educator event. Hopefully you can see that. Marcia and Lisa will be taking the lead with this. It's the introduction to the new 2025 externship evaluation tool called the Canadian Assessment of Clinical Competence. So this is going to be taking place Wednesday, February 19th, again during lunch, 12 to 1. You should have received some emails about this from Jamie a couple of weeks ago, and that's the link there to RSVP to Jamie so that she can send you the link to join the session. And Jamie, do you want to, hold on, there, I had a wonderful thing. We have 2 door prizes to give away today for an acknowledgement of everyone attending. And Jamie has done some magic behind the scenes. So Jamie, who are our 2 winners of a $25 gift card to Starbucks?
Okay, so oh, there we go. The 2 names that were randomly selected are Kelly Dam and Lyra Steves.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yay, congratulations. And there is the link for the RSVP for the event on February 19th. Congratulations to the 2 winners. Any final thoughts, Evan, before we let everyone go?
Take lots of students.
Take
Thank you so much to everybody. And don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions, if there's
Mhm.
anything that you want to follow up on. This is something that gets me really excited in terms of being a CE. And so I think I speak on behalf of the panelists with that too. We're all very keen on this model. So happy just to chat more. And I promise we won't try and twist your arm any further than we have done. We can just have a chat and you can say no.
Mhm. I really would like to thank all the panelists who have volunteered their time today and also for the prep time or the prep meeting last week. Thank you for sharing your expertise and your knowledge of group models of learning. And I echo Evan, I'm really excited about this model and about more engagement events like this to encourage clinicians to take more than 1 student. I'm also available to talk one-on-one about this model or externships in general or about our UBC clinical ed program. So thank you everyone who's made this possible. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, ACE team. Thank you, Clint, for giving us the money for the door prizes. Clint Myers is our admin and manager and HR person. He handles the money. So thanks, Clint. All right. Thank you, everyone, so much. Bye. Have a good rest of your day.